All right, it's time for the fun part of the week. Let's see if we can't make a little bit of money with our Week 11 best bets. 4 games I like in this Week 11. Let's get right to them, shall we? Starting with the Chicago Bears. And I know the Bears have been a disaster recently. There's an old saying in sports betting, you should never bet on a bad team. I obviously don't think much of that saying because I am on the Bears this week. They lost by 41 on the road in Green Bay last week. They were behind 42-0 at halftime of that game. So look, nobody's eager to throw money at this Chicago team right now. Almost nobody, I guess. Understandable, certainly. You have infighting in the locker room. You have people questioning whether the Bears are going to retain head coach Mark Trestman. You have a defense that surrendered 42 first-half points to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers last week. But this week they come home to face the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are not the Green Bay Packers. Minnesota really bad on offense. They average just over 16 points per game. They start rookies at both quarterback and running back. The Bears, I know they have a bad defense. They do have a veteran defense, though. This is not a young defense. These guys have plenty of professional pride. They've been around the block a time or two. They know they were embarrassed last week. They're returning home now to face a punchless offense. I do believe the Bears defense is going to play perhaps their best game of the season here in Week 11. And on the other side of the ball, the Bears just have too much talent on offense to be as bad as they've been over the past few weeks. Now, it hasn't all been bad. Matt Forte has been running the ball pretty well. Brandon Marshall's injury has really hurt the passing attack, but still, Marshall's been out there. Alshon Jeffrey on the other side, one of the better wide receivers in the league. Jay Cutler has been struggling, but we know Cutler's been hot and cold throughout his career. It's not like this guy always plays bad, so I do believe he's going to play better this week than he has in recent weeks. I think it's the right time to jump on the Chicago Bears as just a 2.5-point home favorite over the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears definitely the more talented team in this situation. If they've already quit on the season, if they've already quit on head coach Mark Trestman, they'll probably lose this game. I don't know, though. I'm not willing to say that just yet. I think the Bears are going to beat the Vikings. I like them minus 2.5. Next game I'd like to talk about, the Kansas City Chiefs. A 1.5-point home favorite over the Seattle Seahawks. This is one of the better games of the day, really. Both these teams sit at 6-3. Both these teams playing well recently. Seahawks coming in here having won 3 straight games. However, those 3 games have all come against losing teams. The Chiefs, on the other hand, they have been rolling and they've beaten some really good teams. Kansas City's second in the NFL in points allowed right now. They're surrendering just over 16 points per game. And the Seahawks have struggled a bit on offense, especially in the passing game. 31st, next to last in pass yards per game. Now, they can run the football. They're averaging over 170 yards per game on the ground. But this Kansas City defense has been so good, and the Seahawks very one-dimensional on offense. I have a feeling the Chiefs are really going to limit this Seattle offense today. I'd be surprised if the Seahawks reach 21 points. And on the other side of the ball, I know Seattle has been playing very well on defense this season, as expected. Top 5 in the NFL in total defense. But you look at what the Chiefs have done offensively in recent weeks, especially at home. Now, they went on the road last week and only produced 17 points in a win over the Buffalo Bills. But the Chiefs' offense has been entirely different at home. Jamal Charles playing at an all-pro level once again. Early in the week, I had to lean towards Seattle here because why not? Seems like most people probably have a lean towards Seattle in this game. You have 2 teams with an identical record. 2 teams that, let's face it, are very similar. Both these teams run first offenses, and they both have defenses that are probably a little bit ahead of their offenses right now. Because Seattle won the Super Bowl last year, a lot of people understandably have more trust and faith in them than they do the Chiefs. And as I said early in the week when I looked at this line, I instantly leaned towards Seattle because of that reason, because the Seahawks won the Super Bowl last year, so I have faith in them. The Chiefs disintegrated at the end of last season. They weren't very good at the beginning of this season, so still not as certain about this Kansas City team. However, you take last year out of it, and let's face it, these are 2 different teams. I mean, Seattle, they've suffered a lot of losses on defense. Not only people changing teams, people like Red Bryant, Chris Clemens, but they've suffered a lot of injuries. Linebacker Bobby Wagner, that's been a real significant injury that has really hurt this Seattle defense. Kansas City, meanwhile, you look at the way they played this season, especially in the last 6 games, they've just been better than the Seahawks. I mean, any way you look at it, the Chiefs have been better than the Seahawks over the last 6 weeks. So I believe I've now come all the way on the other side here, and I think Kansas City, a really good value as just a 1.5-point favorite. I think there are a lot of people out there who were just like me early in the week. They saw this line and they thought, ooh, the chance to back Seattle in nearly a pick'em situation against the Chiefs. But they didn't stop and think that maybe the only reason they're saying that is because of what they saw out of Seattle last season. Keep in mind, even in Seattle's latest 3-game winning streak, one of those wins came over the Carolina Panthers, just a 4-point win. And last week, they did beat the New York Giants handily. However, they were behind in halftime. At halftime, that game was tied after 3 quarters. So the final score not really indicative of how that game was played. Again, Kansas City's just been playing better than Seattle for the past month. I believe they're a better team right now, and I think they're going to take care of business. I like the Chiefs as a 1.5-point home favorite over the Seahawks. Next game I'd like to talk about, the New Orleans Saints. The Saints, a 7-point favorite over the Cincinnati Bengals. I am on the Saints. I love to bet on the Saints in the Superdome. I am not ashamed of it. They've treated me very good over the past 3 or 4 years. Look, the Saints almost always win at home. They lost last week to the San Francisco 49ers, but the Bengals have really been struggling. They still have a winning record, though, 5-3-1 on the season. And the Saints, when they face a winning team at home, they are really good, 16-5 against the spread in their last 21 home games against teams with winning records, and they've been favored in 18 of those 21 games. So the Saints play at home. When they face good teams, people always expect the Saints to win. The lines are set accordingly, and the Saints cover anyway. And again, just a 7-point favorite over the Cincinnati Bengals. Now look, I know the Bengals have a better record than the Saints, but the Bengals have been playing terribly in recent weeks. They were beaten 24-3 by the Cleveland Browns last week. I know they beat Jacksonville week before last, but they looked bad in that game also. The Cincinnati defense, 30th in the NFL in total defense, only 2 teams surrendering more yards per game than the Bengals this season. That is a stunner. After all, the Bengals finished 3rd in both yards allowed and points allowed last year. But that was last year, and I am done with waiting on this Cincinnati defense to become good again. It seems like for the past 6 or 7 weeks, every time we break down a Bengals game, say something like, well, we know the Bengals can play championship level defense because we saw it last season, we saw it for the first couple of weeks of this season. Look, we're in week 11 now. We're past the midway point of the season. These teams are what they are. What Cincinnati is a terrible defense. 30th in total defense, 18th in points allowed, and they're not particularly good on offense either. The Bengals, bottom half of the league in total offense, points scored, rushing offense, passing offense, just about every major statistical category on the offensive side, the Bengals rank 16th or worse. The Saints, meanwhile, 2nd in the NFL in total offense, 5th in points scored, and they've shorted up defensively here lately. In their past 4 games, the Saints allowing just 21 points per game. Now, I know that's not dominant, but compare that to the Saints' first month of the season when they just could not stop anybody, and you see they have definitely made progress on the defensive side of the ball. I believe they're going to beat Cincinnati and beat them easily. I like New Orleans -7. Final game I'd like to talk about in this Week 11, the Detroit Lions head out to Arizona to face the Cardinals. Maybe the premier game of the week. Well, that might go to the Sunday night game, New England and Indianapolis, but certainly Detroit and Arizona, one of the best games of the week. The Cardinals, a 1-point favorite on BETDAQ, and I like the Detroit Lions in this situation. I think the time has finally come to get off of the Arizona Cardinals and bet the other side. The Cardinals have been great this season. They've lost just once. They're 7-2 against the number, but they lost Carson Palmer last week, their starting quarterback, to a season-ending knee injury. That is huge. I've heard people sort of no big dealing that injury all week, saying, well, the Cardinals win with defense anyway, and Drew Stanton, one of the better backups in the NFL, and just look at how the Cardinals played when Stanton played early in the season. They were still able to win games with him under center, and that's true. The Cardinals are a team that wins with defense, and they were able to win a couple of games with Drew Stanton under center early in the season. However, you look at those games, the offense was entirely different. They really struggled to move the ball with Drew Stanton at quarterback. He just does not throw the ball nearly as well as Carson Palmer. So the Arizona passing attack going to be much, much different in this game than it has been for the past 3 or 4 weeks. And the Cardinals just haven't been able to run the ball very well all season, averaging less than 4 yards per carry. Andre Ellington has been a good running back to own in fantasy football because he's gotten a lot of work. But again, he's averaging far less than 4 yards per carry. Really hasn't been able to make anything happen between the tackles. And this week, this Arizona offense will be going up against the fierce Detroit Lions defense. Detroit leads the NFL in both yards allowed and points allowed. This is the league's best defense. Now, Detroit has struggled on offense a bit this season, 24th in points scored, but Calvin Johnson, their best offensive player, back in the fold now. He looked like himself last week in his first game after missing a few games with that ankle injury. And Detroit is a pass-first offense. They like to pass the football. You look at this Arizona defense, where they struggle is in the secondary. 30th in the NFL in pass yards allowed. So I think this is a good matchup for the Detroit offense. I think this is a good sell-high time for the Arizona Cardinals. I think Detroit is going to go to Arizona and beat the Cards. I like the Lions +1. There you have it. Those are my 4 games in this Week 11. I like Chicago Bears -2.5, the Kansas City Chiefs -1.5, the New Orleans Saints -7, and the Detroit Lions +1. I wish you best of luck in whatever you decide to do this week, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interest.